You're listening to Inside Eyes, and I'm your host, Laura Mae Northrup. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Inside Eyes. Thank you for joining me once again. I'm your host, Laura Mae Northrup. This has been a long-awaited return with some years since I have released episodes, and I appreciate your patience and continued interest in my work. Over the years, emails from listeners have helped to keep me motivated, and I thank everyone who has taken the time to reach out, to leave reviews of the series, and to share it with people in your lives. Your support truly means the world to me. I also want to give a major shout out and thank you to the 68 people who donated in the fundraiser to get this season produced. I appreciate each and every one of you for taking the time to donate, and I know the people listening and benefiting from this show appreciate you too. Okay, so I want to tell you a bit about how this season is different than the first. In season 1, we went deep into understanding how several individuals engaged in their own healing from sexual violence with the use of psychedelics and entheogens. If you have not listened to that, I invite you to go all the way back to the beginning and listen in, as season 1 is more of a self-contained audio series with a beginning, middle, and end. And it is an incredible gift from the survivors who courageously and vulnerably shared their stories for us to learn alongside them. This season, season 2, is similarly more like a self-contained audio series, with information that builds on itself as the episodes progress. However, it does not include interviews. It does contain substantial information you may need if you're going to embark on some psychedelic or entheogenic healing related to sexual trauma. You may find that it is also useful for any type of trauma, but I will be speaking on healing sexual trauma throughout the season. Over the years, since season 1, I have also heard from many of you and done numerous interviews, and from those exchanges, I have learned a lot about what you all are thinking and wanting to hear more about. In a way, this season is my formal and in-depth response to the ongoing conversation that many of you have participated in by posing questions to me and sharing your thoughts. So thank you for joining me yet again. And please note, although at the time of this recording, I am a licensed psychotherapist in the state of California in the United States, this podcast is not therapy, it is not a substitute for therapy, and it is not advice attuned to your specific needs. So please seek advice from a trained, competent practitioner about your specific situation to keep you as safe as possible before embarking on healing with psychedelics or entheogens. I offer these insights in the spirit of harm reduction and education. And remember, there is sensitive content in these episodes that is not suitable for children. And before I go on, I want to share that in the time I was not releasing episodes, I wrote and published a book. My book is called Radical Healership: How to Build a Values-Driven Healing Practice in a Profit-Driven World. Part memoir and part politicized self-help. In a nutshell, it is a self-help book for the helpers. It is for healing practitioners of all kinds, including therapists, psychedelic guides, breath workers, etc., truly any type of healing practitioner, and it tackles spiritual, psychological, and political issues around what it means for us to survive in capitalism and offer healing work with integrity. I'm so delighted to be able to offer this piece of writing to you all. Seriously, I poured my heart, soul, tears, and years of my life into this book. I'm proud to say it has already sold out of its first printing, and people seem to find it super helpful. So if you like what you hear on my show, trust me, the same level of heart and intention is waiting for you in that book. If you're considering becoming a healing practitioner, or you already are one, but you want to rethink how you walk your path, you can order it anywhere books are sold. Again, it's called Radical Healership: How to Build a Values-Driven Healing Practice in a Profit-Driven World. And, of course, I want to encourage you to buy it from your local independent bookstore, and then run to the internet and leave a review. Okay, so let's turn now to talking about a few things that will help to flesh out some of my thinking around this season. It feels important to start with naming where my heart is at. In his book, Ritual, Power, Healing, and Community, Malidoma Somé wrote that we enter into ritual in order to respond to the call of the soul. And that is where this series really starts, because there is a call coming through and it needs a response. Perhaps that is what brought you here today. It is certainly what brings me. And every ritual begins with intention. Over the next several weeks, I intend to support us in understanding how sexual violence impacts survivors spiritually, why healing spiritual wounds is essential to our personal and collective liberation, how one does that within an expanded state and within consensus reality, and the role of isolation in preventing efforts towards liberation and wellness. I'm going to talk about how to make safer environments for healing. I will talk about preparation, post-journey integration, choosing a guide, and interacting with the psychedelic or entheogen itself. I will go deep into the importance of preparing yourself for such a journey and describe my theory of how healing happens. In this series, people seeking transformation will hopefully receive an immense amount of information about how to more safely and effectively engage in this type of healing while reducing harm to themselves and others. Guides and people who want to be guides will listen and hopefully learn more in depth about working with survivors of sexual violence in a healing capacity. This season is intended to be intentional in every way. These are big intentions, and while I will be offering somewhat of a guidebook, so to speak, I must say, embarking on this work is, if nothing else, a journey into deeper states of truth. And we cannot bargain with truth. We can simply witness it and know it. That is the cost of truth, the discomfort of knowing what is, rather than residing in what we might wish it to be. While the movement to legalize, medicalize, and otherwise professionalize the use of plant medicines and psychedelic substances often leans towards sanitizing the experience, attempting to produce the right way to journey or the empirical evidence that proves the measurable outcomes of such an endeavor. And this series might fall somewhere in there by suggesting useful protocols. Sometimes what happens with expanded states is accidental, unpredictable, unexplainable, and irreproducible. Expanded states defy attempts to be categorized. They obliterate order. And sometimes what they do is simply magic. And that magic might or might not be in the safety of a well-appointed office or retreat center with a trained guide. The first time I experienced a psychedelic, I was walking down the street in the city where I lived, and someone said, "Acid, $1. I bought a tab and popped it into my mouth. I wandered away and into astonishment. I would never redo that experience and wish it to be different. So take what I say within the complexity of these truths, that I will offer a path, and yours may be quite different. Protection is a part of every ritual. May this series be a prayer for your safety, whatever route you take." I looked up the definition of magic for this episode, and what I got was roughly this: the power of apparently influencing the course of events by using mysterious or supernatural forces. That led me to looking up the definition of supernatural, which went something like of relating to or being above or beyond what is natural, unexplainable by natural law or phenomena, and of a manifestation or event attributed to some force beyond scientific understanding or the laws of nature. For people who deny that magic exists, you can think of this definition with a larger time frame attached to it. Sometimes entheogens and psychedelics do things that cannot yet be explained by the natural laws or phenomena that Enlightenment-influenced Euro-American scientific tradition embraces, despite the fact that many cultures do have this understanding with robust cosmologies and ways of conceptualizing what psychedelics and entheogens are capable of. And understanding aside, we can believe the result. People with medical conditions that are not able to be cured or treated with psychedelics sometimes take a psychedelic and no longer have symptoms. People who feel overwhelming emotions that debilitate their lives sometimes take an entheogen and suddenly no longer feel the overwhelm. People who are struggling with or highly dependent on substances such as opioids and alcohol sometimes take an entheogen and exit the experience with no desire to return to heavy substance use. And as much psychological theory as I throw at it, sometimes, in some cases, there is no way of explaining why the entheogen or psychedelic has the effect other than magic, mystery, soul-level healing, or divine intervention. And one thing that is interesting about these miraculous healings is that they are not consistent. It is not the case that every person who does a similar dose of a similar entheogen who has the same diagnosis or symptoms as another person will receive the same kind of healing. We cannot say LSD heals shame stemming from childhood abuse by cleaning off your soul, and yet someone has had that exact experience. On the other hand, some people will take a psychedelic in a controlled therapeutic or ceremonial setting, or in the cavalier manner in which I described my first hit of acid, and they will experience it as one of the worst choices they have ever made, living through complete hell, terror, and possibly having lasting, hard-to-navigate effects, including some forms of what biomedical models of medicine call psychosis. For that reason, I'm going to continue suggesting, in an effort to reduce harm, that you make your best attempts to be prepared, intentional, and as safe as possible. However, that is not to deny that people find healing in the most unexpected places, recreationally at parties, out in the woods with friends, and in their own living spaces. Magic and the numinous cannot be sanitized or controlled, only encountered and related to. I name these things not to quantify or make the perfect roadmap, but to invite you into the complexity with me and suggest a certain level of expectation management. So, as you listen to my thoughts on how to create the most intentional healing environment possible, remember, that isn't because I don't think you will do remarkable healing in other formats. It is because my ultimate goal here is to inspire you to protect yourself and reduce the potential for harm as you do some of what may be the hardest healing work of your life. Therefore, I highly encourage you to take extreme care and caution around what environments you choose to take a consciousness-expanding substance in. Even though people find healing in recreational environments, I am urging you to think very critically about the level of trauma you are suffering from and focus on creating an environment that can greatly enhance your chances of having a healing, non-harming experience. I want to turn to talking about another element to this series, which is a focus on education and transformation in service of collective embodied liberation. In all my previous work, I've spoken of the politicized lens that I view violence through, of the political lens that I view healing work through. And yet, when asked about my work, when my work is quoted, when I am requested to speak or teach on specific topics, that political lens is often the first thing to go. We are living in a time where we are so inundated with individual healing narratives that are devoid of a political lens that at times it may seem that our political struggles are secondary or completely disconnected from our individual healing. Or we may feel compelled to view collective embodied power as an afterthought, as though liberation is something so unattainable, so why bother? As though healing is something that can be done without acknowledging the political layers of our pain and our growth. Please, I beg of you to bother. I beg of you not to forget, for us to remember together that each step in our healing is not individual, but rather collective. And while you may do some of it on your own or alone, it is an essential component to the collective liberation of all life. And to ignore that is to injure yourself and the well-being of the people and lands you love. In all my previous work, I also speak to a spiritual lens, and this too is easy to forget. In interviews, in teaching, in general, the spiritual element can be left to the side, trimmed away because of time, because of the audience not wanting a spiritual lens, because of religious trauma, or fear that it could be perceived as too woo-woo and thus off-putting. However, my view on spirituality is practical, grounded in liberation, welcomes a non-religious lens, and does not require a belief in any particular God. We live in a time that is so spiritually bereft that it takes a tremendous effort to remember that the spiritual is the political, that spiritual questions and actions are intrinsic to being human. The question of how one lives and dies is deeply spiritual and deeply political. So I beg of you to remember this with me, to not put it to the side, but rather to keep an open heart to that which is sacred, not because it is en vogue or a fascinating lens to look through, but rather because it is essential to healing and foundational to collective liberation. Okay, Some final words I wish to offer you. Everyone's healing arc is different. Many of you listening are survivors, doing the work that your ancestors, your parents, or your caregivers did not have the strength, support, or means to do. I see you and acknowledge your courage. Many of you are not survivors, but you want to support a survivor in your community, in your family, maybe your partner, maybe even your kid. I see you, and I thank you for showing up. Several of you are healing practitioners working to support survivors. Thank you for your care and commitment. In making this series, I honor those who need healing now, who needed it years gone by, who needed it generations ago. I honor those who did not survive, because not all of us do. I honor the children and adults I want us to protect, people who do not know this harm and never should. I honor the people, plants, and animals yet to come, those that need us to break the cycles of violence and heal ourselves today so that we do not harm them tomorrow. May this series be a beacon and a balm, empowering us toward collective liberation. Thank you for joining me here once again. Okay, we will leave it there for today. Please take care of yourself after listening to this episode and as you move through the whole series. Also, I'm thinking I will likely do some free online Q&A sessions for people who have questions related to the series. I will announce the dates for that on my email list. If you want to support the show, please rate it on whatever podcasting app you use and consider sharing this episode with people who may benefit. Thank you so much for supporting this work. I teach occasional classes, offer group and individual consultation to clinicians around the world, and provide psychotherapy to people located in California. If you are curious about my offerings, you can find more information and contact me via my website, lauramaynorthrup.com. And here's where I give out my social media handles. But I want to say a little something about social media. You only see what ends up being popular enough to come into your feed the days that you look at the app, an app that is controlled and censored by capitalist elites. If you want to ensure you hear about ways to work with me, learn from me, or get healing support, join my email list. I send very few emails, usually less than 5 per year. You can find it on my website, lauramaynorthrup.com, or there is a link in the show notes. And again, that is also where I will announce dates for any online Q&A sessions related to this season, so definitely sign up if you want to hear about those. And if you want to see memes and leave things up to social media fate, find me on Instagram at lauramaynorthrup. And don't forget, I have a new book out, Radical Healership. Check it out. Link in the show notes. Okay, until next time.